for being with us today. Indeed, a historic day for the relationship between Turkey and Pakistan. Today's top Twitter trend in Pakistan was hashtag Marhaba Erdogan, which means hello Erdogan in English. Tell me, how important is this visit of the Turkish president to Pakistan?
I believe there's a lot of excitement, first of all, in both the countries, and Pakistanis are very excited to have the Turkish president here after November 2016, the last time when he spoke to a joint parliamentary session here in Pakistan, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. This time, of course, the expectation is that what had been envisaged, especially in relation to the free trade agreement in 2015, which remains to be implemented, that would be taken forward. There are a lot of memorandums of agreement yet to be signed, and so some good news is expected from the Prime Minister of Pakistan and the Turkish President by tomorrow, when they are going to be co-chairing the 6th High-Level Strategic Cooperation Council, which is focused on political coordination, culture, tourism, education, and other areas, capacity building, technology transfer, very key areas, and it represents a very good opportunity for investors on both the sides, for the business community on both the sides, and it's a welcome change that, today when the world is so polarized, there are so many divisions, there are so many borders. Here there are two countries who've shared a very good friendly relationship, who have been allies through thick and through thin. They have stood the test of time. They are talking about collaborations. They are talking about putting ease on visa restrictions, doing away with trade barriers, especially these are the days when Brexit is very much on vogue. On the other hand, we've got Turkey and Pakistan who are collaborating, and not only collectively have we achieved so much and are yet to achieve so much, but even individually, if I look at it, Turkey and Pakistan have become key prominent players on the global scale. I mean, Turkey has been host to the largest number of international refugees after the 2015 international refugee crisis. It is also standing up to and repelling the aggression coming from the Al-Assad regime in Syria against Syrian civilians. On the other hand, Pakistan has been playing a very constructive role with America in bringing peace, long-lasting peace to Afghanistan finally. So when individually we have been achieving so much, one can only imagine that collectively there's a lot that we can do, and ultimately it's a huge win-win situation for the people of our two great nations. That is something to look forward to. Now, interestingly, I did talk about the free trade agreement between both the countries, and the expectation was, and that is something that under the strategic economic framework just last year Ankara had communicated to Islamabad, the expectation is that the trade should go beyond the current $900 million. It can increase 5-manifold, 5 times more than where it stands today. And just yesterday, Prime Minister Imran Khan addressed the youth community of Pakistan and talked about encouraging our young entrepreneurs. Now, just imagine, if our two countries were to collaborate, how many more avenues would be open to the young, to the business communities from both the countries. There are 9 companies also who have invested in Turkey in recent times. In education, that is another sector, Pakistan has been a key ally with Turkey. Pakistan, along with Turkey, has been very much engaged in the fight against terror. There is no tolerance for any Gulenist organization either. Pak Turk schools had been handed over to Marif Foundation. So there is a lot of collaboration, and not just on a political or economic level, but even in terms of defense cooperation. I remember particularly that when President Erdogan had visited Pakistan the last time, and in his joint parliamentary session, he stressed a lot on the fight against terror. And if I were to look at what Turkey has been doing for the last few years, they have been fighting the terror threat that had been quite prevalent in Middle East owing to Daesh or ISIS. Gulen organizations, PKK, all the rogue organizations out there, we even become stronger, our people become stronger the more that we counter the terrorist threat. So that is another key area. Last year, there was a joint Navy drill successfully undertaken by Turkey and Pakistan in the Mediterranean and the Arabian Sea. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Just imagine, if something fruitful comes about, and that is, I'm quite confident about it, what is going to happen tomorrow. We can go places together.
Definitely. Now, Muneeb, there are many items on the agenda for the meeting between the Turkish president and the Pakistani prime minister. Of course, trade and the fight against terrorism is in it.
Yes.
But we have also seen the Turkish president and the Pakistani prime minister taking a robust stance in the fight against Islamophobia. How do you think Turkey and Pakistan can collaborate to counter this ill notion?
Right. See, Islamophobia, again, this is an issue which I believe Turkey has also addressed to the European Union, with the rise of Islamophobia in a lot of EU countries. And the fact that just yesterday I read that President Emmanuel Macron again justified sort of, ridiculing the Muslim community, saying that this comes under the heading of freedom of expression. But I'm sorry, there is a very thin line, but there is definitely a line between freedom of expression and hate speech. I, as a Pakistani here, and I said this the last time I was on your show, can never tolerate any form of discrimination against any minority in Pakistan, for example. This is me on my individual level. I talked to you last time how anti-Semitism is a big no, how any kind of phobia towards the Hindu community, for example, in my midst, is completely intolerable to me. So the same should be the standard applied in the rest of the world. I mean, they had paved in the way. That was what the Western democracy was all about. And Pakistan and Turkey, they both have a shared vision. Just in your introduction, like you mentioned, it even predates the creation of Pakistan. And when Turkey became a republic, the Turkish independent movement was supported by the Muslims of the subcontinent when we were under British rule towards the decline of the Ottoman Empire. Now, when we unite, together to counter Islamophobia, and we are both OIC members as well, not only are we addressing the growing menace of Islamophobia, which has taken over the world, but also all forms of xenophobia, because ultimately Islamophobia is just one aspect of the wider xenophobic right-wing mentality that unfortunately is taking over like an epidemic all across the world. So when we counter Islamophobia, we would be countering all sorts of phobias, and Islamophobia is very much at the center stage. Unfortunately, the kind of world that we live in today, there is a lot of paranoia, there's a lot of polarization, there's the terror threat. There are people who use false pretexts or apparently pretend to have carried out their rogue activities under, religious ideology. But once again, that has nothing to do with religion. There are so many people who do, who carry out such rogue activities under so many different pretexts as well. Ultimately, terrorists are terrorists because they are designed as such. They are the way they are. You cannot pin it down on members of a particular religious group. I remember that in the UK a few months ago, there was a Jewish person who was being subjected to an anti-Semitic attack in an underground train. And it was a Muslim woman wearing the hijab, which is deemed to be very controversial in a lot of Western European countries. She came to his rescue. And this is when we stand up for one another, regardless of what faith one belongs to, that we truly show that there is one relationship of humanity which binds us. And this is the message that we have to put across. Now, I remember that on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, Pakistan, Turkey and Malaysia had talked about collaborating for, first of all, a channel, English language channel, to reach as wide an audience as possible, to raise awareness about countering Islamophobia. That is another development which is still awaited. I hope that, again, something fruitful comes out of it, owing to this meeting, owing to, the President of Turkey visiting Pakistan. In the MOUs that are signed tomorrow, there's also a Business Investment Forum. I hope that these ideas, which are quite healthy, I believe, they are going to have a long-term impact. I hope that they do come to fruition. That is something that is awaited, and I'm quite confident that it is going to materialize very soon, hopefully.
And Muneeb, the latest example of Islamophobia can be seen in Pakistan's neighboring India with what they have done with Kashmir and the latest Citizenship Amendment Act. Welcome back. All right, Muneeb, like we saw in the report, the president of Azad Kashmir thanked the Turkish president, just like him, the Pakistani prime minister, the Pakistani president, and most importantly, the Pakistani people have thanked the Turkish people and the Turkish president for their support on the Kashmir issue. Now my question is, Indian atrocities in the occupied Kashmir region have not ended. What further role should the international community play to stop India?
there's a whole there are plethora of international legal rules there. How about bringing them into effect? How about bringing them into force? That was what was envisaged when the United Nations was created. That was the very basis of its inception. So how about, we bring those international legal provisions pertaining to self-determination, pertaining to human rights law. There's a whole international human rights law, in itself. What about that? There are so many conventions, Geneva Conventions, Torture Convention, Genocide Convention, all of them here at stake. This is the time that those laws are implemented, and I commend Turkey for its support, because this definitely counts as a support towards Pakistan, but beyond that, this is support for humanity. And just like I said, that, Turkey has been playing its role, it has been playing, home to so many refugees as well. It is going to be remembered being on the right side of history. Now, it's more than 6 months that after the abrogation of Article 370 and Article 35A, at the behest of the Modi government, that Indian occupied Kashmir is under lockdown. People have been deprived of their rights, and Islamophobia is on the rise right now. When politicians from the ruling BJP party can openly advocate violence towards Muslims. Look at the open shooting, firing incidents which took place in broad daylight on the streets of Delhi after the backlash that protesters came up with in response to the Citizenship Amendment Act. And this government in India is being intransigent. But let me also tell you that the Turkish government and the Turkish president and the Turkish regime are supporting humanity. They are supporting Pakistan. They are supporting Kashmiris when they speak up for the Kashmiris, and they are also supporting for those conscientious people in India. Those are loyal subjects of their country. I would also like to take this platform because, yes, I do criticize the Indian government policy, but there are so many brave people in India who are out on the streets in Shaheen Bagh, those Jamia Islamia students, those Aligarh Muslim University students. They are standing up for their country. They love their country. They are standing to defend their constitution. Those who stand up for their constitution can never be anti-nationals. They are the true lovers of their country, and I salute the valor and the courage of those people as well. That is what I'm saying, that any form of hatred needs to be eradicated. I have had first-hand account of Islamophobia on Indian media, and that hatred was completely owing to my faith and owing to my nationality. And this generation, whether they are Turkish, whether they are Kashmiris, whether they are Pakistanis, we all say no to hatred. And just look at the humiliating defeat that the BJP government has had to face recently in the Delhi elections. So this might be the turning of the tide. And when again I speak of Turkey and Pakistan, this collaboration I am hoping is going to produce good results. I just remember in January when, the tensions had escalated to an all-time high in the Middle East with, following the assassination of General Soleimani in Iraq. And US and Iran were on the verge of a very frightful war. It was Turkey and Pakistan, among other countries, who were calling for de-escalation. This is the time that we all use international law. There are international legal provisions pertaining to all sorts of international disputes, be that use of force, which is completely prohibited under Article 2.4 of the UN Charter, be it rights to self-determination. But like I've been talking about turning of the tide, just look at the International Court of Justice. Has it not prima facie admitted that what is going on in Myanmar against the Rohingya community, that is potential genocide? Now, when the ICJ says that, we know that, if Gambia could bring this to the ICJ's attention today, tomorrow a non-Commonwealth country towards which India has not had any reservation in the International Court of Justice could also alert these international institutions to what is going on in there, because the Genocide Watch has also given a genocide alert in relation to what is happening in Indian occupied Kashmir. So what more can be done? Like I said, collaboration, especially OIC countries, they need to gather together. There's brotherhood among Muslim majority countries. We need to bring attention to this. The fact that, what is going on in Kashmir is making headlines on international media. This is unprecedented. I mean, I cannot underestimate the impact of this. I remember that barely ever was there a mention of Kashmir, but now when I go to New York Times, The Guardian, to any well-reputed international media outlet, they are talking about the Kashmir dispute. So this is a beginning. This is a very good beginning, but a lot needs to be done. There are powers available to the Security Council ranging from all sorts of sanctions under Articles 41 and 42 of the Charter. There's the International Court of Justice, there's the International Criminal Court, which has recently in December seized jurisdiction over the atrocities committed against Palestinians by the Israeli regime. So when, there are international courts taking up matters, taking over jurisdiction pertaining to matters and human rights abuses going on in Myanmar, going on in Palestine, I'm hoping that the same is going to be done in relation to Kashmir. It is about time. It's more than 7 decades. Generations have inherited this dispute. Just look at the images of Umar Abdullah, Farooq Abdullah, Mehbooba Mufti. Her daughter has been tweeting that they have been locked up. The image of Umar Abdullah which came out. Even leaders in Indian occupied Kashmir are not safe, let alone the common civilians. We as the global community, as the world community, owe them so much more.
Definitely, we do. Like you said, no to hate, no to persecution. This is the time we start raising our voices for the innocent Kashmiris of the Indian-occupied Kashmir. Muneeb, Qadir, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for participating in today's program.